of course, you got your start in writing, as he mentioned on the Mike Douglas show, at the early age of 24. Now, for us and other writers and people who aspire to be writers, can you tell us about the journey from deciding that writing was something that you were interested in to that process of now landing a job doing it?
Well, I just wanted to be in show business. And I came out to Hollywood. I had an internship at NBC News in New York when I was hoping to stay there, and someone didn't want me to stay there, so apparently. So I was looking for jobs, and someone said, I know someone in LA will hire you. And it was a guy who's passed away, who was incredibly mean to other people. He was always nice to me, but he was incredibly mean, and like all the typewriters where we worked were stolen, and everything was. You couldn't work for a more shady person. Okay. Anyway, so I'm there, and he kept me waiting for 3 days, and then he finally said, "Why don't you go out to lunch with this producer, this woman who was producing a show for him, a pilot for him?" And she said, "Can you write?" And I said, "Yes." I'd written before, but my dream wasn't to necessarily be a writer. Yeah. But as a writer, the reason I said yes is because I always learned in Hollywood you say yes, because the bar is not that high. If you have talent, if you have some modicum of talent, if you have perseverance and some business sense, which is just common sense, you can succeed. It's just getting up after you've been knocked down. So I worked on that show, and every job I had has somehow led to another job. It could be 2, 3 jobs down the line. And what happened is about 2 years later, I worked on a number of specials as a production assistant. And really that shows like Circus of the Stars and the People's Choice Awards. And I worked with somebody in the Mike Douglas show, which used to be done at that time it was being done out of Philadelphia. It came to Los Angeles for 2 weeks. And they asked if I wanted to work on it. And they liked me so much, they said, "You want to come back with us to Philadelphia?" And I decided, this is a good job, but this is like being named head of the mailroom. It's a good job. You don't want to be the head of the mailroom. You want to be able to move on from there. Yeah. So I moved to Philadelphia, and 2 weeks after I moved there, they said, "You don't have to find a place. We're moving the show back to LA." And so I worked there, and I think my title was associate producer, but I was the guy who interviewed the guests, pre-interviewed the guests, and you used to have to come up with, you had to write questions, and Mike needed everything scripted. And they also believed that you couldn't end an interview with, "Thank you, interesting interview." You have to have the guests do something crazy, or some shtick or something they had to do, and which led to a lot of uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Right. Yeah. And but it was a good experience. You know, if you work on a talk show, I worked on there for 2 years, and you eventually meet everybody, because eventually everybody does something. Mm-hmm. And so I got to meet a lot of people there. I remember working with Ron Howard. Ron was on Happy Days, and he was co-hosting. And he mentioned that what he really wanted to do was direct. We were talking, and he asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, "I want to write." He says, "Maybe one day we'll work together." And I've been his company, Imagine Films. I've done a number of films for. So it all started with a relationship of someone I met on the Douglas show.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue, actually. You were there for 3 years, and during that time, and to be honest, I didn't know about this show until I was doing my research on you for this interview.
And I should have been on TV so long. I watched it with my grandmother when I was little.
Yeah, that's what blew my mind, is it was like longer running than SNL. If it were at like 30 or 40s or 50s, it got its start.
No, I think it started in the early 60s. Okay. 60s in Philadelphia, in Cleveland.
And during, I went through all the episodes that you were a writer on, and I see you're working with guests like there's James Caan, Sonny Bono, Lucille Ball, David.
Everybody.
Yeah, like all of these these classics that we all grew up with. So I have two questions. First of all, what was it like writing for such heavy hitters at the age of 24? Like that's one of your first jobs, and then just getting started. And second, do you have is there like a particular memory from your time there with working with all these people that comes to mind?
Well, I wasn't. There were some guests who I actually wrote stories for because they have only so many anecdotes. Mm-hmm. So I would help and give them an anecdote to tell, which didn't happen to them, but it gave them something to talk about.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise, we were just interviewing them and then trying to get them to do something special at the end, which was, I say, could be embarrassing. I remember we had David Letterman on when he was on the Mary Tyler Moore show, variety show with Michael Keaton. And Lucille Ball was on the show, and the producers wanted me to sell this bit to David Letterman. What's funnier, old comedy, or physical comedy, or your kind of comedy? And David Letterman would do a line, and then Lucille Ball would cut his tie or some stupid like that. And I remember telling David Letterman, I was like, even though Letterman was just starting out, I just so much in my eyes were saying, they're making me tell you this. I don't think this is very funny either. And his manager came up to me and says, it's not David's cup of tea. And I go, mine either. And and still he was entertaining by being David Letterman.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was like, I remember seeing Don Rickles naked. I tried to forget that image. But he was hosting, and he liked to have like a big glass of vodka before he went on. And he came out of the shower, and he was in a robe, and he just opened. He goes, "Look at me! I'm a bald old Jew with a tiny dick." and he's also from that old school of entertainment where you don't put on your pants until you're about to go on, because you don't want to have a crease in your pants.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense.
So he went from Three's Company to the Three-Legged Company.
Yeah. And who else? Tiger Woods when he was 4 years old.
Oh wow!
This clip that they always show him being with Mike Douglas and Bob Hope. I produced that segment, and because Mike was a big golfer and loved anything with golf, and when Tiger Woods became famous, I go, is this the same? You don't remember? There's not a lot of people you work with named Tiger.
Yeah, right.
And whose dad was named Sergeant. So I'm going, this must be the guy. I guess he was good.
Why don't you subscribe? It'll last longer.